Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Inkscape developer update. My name is Martin. I'm an Inkscape developer hoping to make Inkscape better for users like yourself. This week is the second week of the connectors tool upgrade, which is kindly contracted by Chris. To dive straight into what changes have happened this week, basically what is happening is that I am rewriting the connectors tool because it needs to be translated into a live path effect. As I described last week, it's a new system that we developed many years ago to modify paths. And this week I needed to be able to actually change the positions of the ends of the line so that they can be attached to objects themselves. So this is recreating the same functionality we already have, and that's likely going to continue, is that I'm going to be looking at existing functionality in the connectors tool and then recreating it in either in the live path effect itself, or as I'll show you later on, in the new point objects that we have. So what I had to do this week is I actually had to recreate the connection of the ends of lines to objects, the writing of those positions correctly, and then the adjusting of them so that if, say, you set it to a circle, the line will only start to be drawn once it reaches the edge of the circle, right? Because otherwise you end up getting a line that goes from the center. I've actually made that optional now, so you can actually choose to go from the center or not. It's up to you. And there was a lot of interesting code, which I showed on Twitter, of me trying to get the positions of these objects correct between the two objects. I wrote so much code. And then eventually it turns out that most of that code wasn't even necessary. So a great learning exercise, writing lots of code and then having to delete it because it actually isn't useful. It turns out that the end solution was actually fairly simple. The translation between two objects is possible in Inkscape. We already have convenience functions to do that. Because you don't know whether the line that's connecting the two objects together is a part of the same group or not, or whether it has the same transforms. Maybe one is skewed, maybe one is rotated, etc. And those transformations make the calculation between how the line will hit the object more complicated. I also added a new object, which is an Inkscape point object. This connector point can't be a part of the SVG specification, so we've added it as an Inkscape specific object. It won't represent anything in SVG when you open it in a browser or any other SVG editor, and those points are represented by their relative position within that shape. These objects will probably continue to be Inkscape objects. I can't foresee a future where they end up in the SVG specification, unfortunately. This is because it's its own special object. It can be treated differently inside the code, and I've tested it with lots of transformations, lots of objects with different positions, lots of different types of objects. And the future is going to be involved in making sure that you can create these point objects inside of any object using the connector tool. That's the goal inside this contract, is to be able to create these points. But I have confirmed that we can connect the new connector lines in the live path effect to these points, and they do track correctly with the objects, which is great. And that's about the whole work. I spent most of my time on this week, but there's a lot of toing and froing. Next week on the connectors tool, I'm probably going to be focusing on destroying the existing connectors tool, basically ripping out all of the code, so that I can start replacing the graphical user interface itself with the new live path effect. So that's the plan for next week. But I didn't just do the connectors tool this week. I actually spent a decent amount of time doing a review of an upgrade to the Python extensions repository. Jonathan Neuhauser did this wonderful merge request where he created this upgrade to the Python extensions to allow styles to be properly propagated throughout the SVG document. And it's not something that is currently needed, but it makes the extensions repository code base basically an SVG renderer. Like it knows things about what colors things would be if it was rendered in a browser, without needing Inkscape, without needing a browser itself, which is really good functionality to have. It's a lot of change, a lot of tests, a lot of reviewing, but Jonathan, he stuck with it no matter how much I ground him about like making this really, really good and really, really perfect, and making sure there was tests for everything. So a big shout out to Jonathan for like sticking with my pretty strict review process on there. I also spent Wednesday doing an extension review day. Thank you so much for all of the people who came to the live stream. It was great to see people. It was great to answer questions about writing tests, questions about reviewing code. I went through about 20 of the top extensions on the Inkscape website, and I reviewed them all for basically quality, whether they work in the version of Inkscape we currently have. And then I wanted to approve them so they could be installed using the Extensions Manager. And I got five of them in, which is not great. My hope is that in the future versions of Inkscape, the extensions authors themselves will see the value in having their code evaluated, and so they'll be able to apply things like stricter self-coding, making better quality extensions. That's the hope. But we also spent a long time writing tests, so like basic tests for each of the extensions, so that if a lot of these authors want a quick way into improving their code, their coverage, their quality, etc., I've written tests now for a lot of them, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and push them upstream so that the authors, whether they're using GitHub or GitLab or what have you, will have access to those tests. And finally, because of that work, I actually managed to improve the Extensions Manager itself, improving the way it installs things, uninstalls things, and how it deals with approved items. I actually put in a new thing that says recommended because I wanted the clip art importer to be a recommended item that appeared at the top. And it kind of gives you a sampling of items, so like the top items appear without you having to do a search for them, which was a requested feature. Basically because people were looking at that empty search screen and like going and throwing up their hands and going, I have no idea what this is. So hopefully that will make it easier to use. That's about it this week. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. The connectors tool, the extensions. The release is next week or the week after. It's soon. And so very excited for that. I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to all of my Patreons and supporters who continued to help me make this possible. And let me know how you're doing with Inkscape 1.1. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all next week.